Guns come in a wide variety of shapes and sizes, from tiny derringers all the way up to massive game rifles, and with so many different designs to fit all the many niches they fill. Today I would like to discuss some of the weirdest guns ever designed, of course, in my opinion. To start off, we have the STG-44, a gun many of you may be familiar with. This is widely considered the first modern assault rifle, and inspired the AK-47, though I am talking specifically about the STG-44 Krummlauf, which means curved barrel. This variant was designed with two uses in mind: shooting around corners while keeping the infantrymen safe, and for shooting at enemy infantry who had gotten too close to a tank. The barrels were designed with four variants: 30, 45, 60, and 90 degrees. Only the 30-degree variant was produced in large numbers. It could survive only about 300 rounds before the barrel would need to be replaced, with the greater curves surviving significantly less wear. The STG-44 fired the 7.92 by 33 quarts round, and all the remaining Krummlaufs are in museums. Next we have the Gyro Jet, a line of guns developed in the 1960s and continued development and production into the 1970s before being discontinued. Rather than using a traditional round, the Gyro Jet fires a miniature rocket-propelled round, 13mm and then 12mm. They were inaccurate compared to conventional bullets, in part due to the barrel having no rifling. The round self-stabilized by virtue of its exhaust ports for the rocket being slightly angled. They captured public interest, being included in a Bond film as well as other media. They are extremely rare modernly, with some being in museums and likely several hundred in private collections. Next is the Store Machine Pistol. Information on this gun is sparse, as it never made it far into development. Developed in the 1970s, this strange gun fires .22 Magnum. It uses a blow-forward configuration, meaning the barrel slides forward rather than backwards to eject the spent casing and emit a new round. The pan magazine holds the belt-fed rounds and nests on your bicep, making it an arm gun, essentially a bullpup variant that never took off. This strange gun is very interesting, and one I would personally love to see in real life. Next we have the Bergman Pistols, or Bergman. Developed in the 1890s, these guns have achieved some fame recently, as Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, uses a Bergman M1894 as his blaster in the show. These guns use an interesting setup. The internal box magazine, which holds 5 rounds, is seated in front of the trigger, giving it a strange front-heavy look, and allowing you to use a forward hand. The pistol was chambered in 4 different rounds, all developed by Bergman: 5mm Bergman, 6.5mm Bergman, 8x22mm Bergman, and 7.8mm Bergman. The 1897 variant was upgraded to have a detachable 10-round magazine, still in front of the trigger. Bergman discontinued the gun after being outcompeted by Mauser, and went on to develop the MP-18, the famous late World War I German SMG. Now we come to the Harmonica guns. These are harder to give specifics on, as it's a whole category, but these were developed in the intermediary period between revolvers and the invention of the magazine. They used a sliding chunk of steel with chambers bored into it. Each chamber was loaded with a round, and when you fired one, you slid the slide over by hand to put the next round in front of the firing pin. This allowed you to fire more bullets in a quick succession without having to reload your gun. These guns existed in the early to mid 1800s and were phased out due to them being clunky and finicky. This beauty here is called a duckfoot pistol. Named for the similarity between the splayed barrels and a duck's foot, this type of gun was used during the 1800s. Usually adopted by navies and sailors, it was intended to be used to quickly clear enemy sailors from the deck during a boarding. It functioned like an early shotgun, able to clear enemies They never really took off because trying to reload multiple barrels in combat is much harder than just one barrel, and sailors quickly adopted the revolver after it became widespread, dooming this Anatine gun to the footnotes of history. The Sedgley fist gun, made famous by Inglourious Bastards, operated by forming a fist and punching an enemy. The trigger is then depressed and fires a .38 special round. The simple design allowed the guns to be made cheaply and quickly, but only about 100 were produced before the project was abandoned, on the grounds that the gun was too specific and difficult to use effectively. They were issued to soldiers, though there is no report of one actually being used. German Korobov was a Soviet gun designer who worked for Tula Arms starting in 1939. None of his weapon designs were actually adopted, but he had lots of interesting ideas. My favorite is the TKB 059. TKB in all these guns' names stands for Tula Design Bureau. The TKB 059 is a tri-barreled bullpup rifle, capable of 1,400 to 1,800 rounds a minute. I found multiple claims on the intended magazine size. Each barrel was fed by 1/3 of a large box magazine, capable of carrying either 45, 60, or 90 rounds. My assumption is that all three sizes of magazine were tested. It fired 7.62 by 39mm, the same round as the AK line, and was designed and built in the 1960s, though it was rejected by the Soviet military in large part because firing the weapon full auto made it very difficult to control, because it's the equivalent of duct taping 3 AK-47s together and firing them. His second gun I want to talk about is the TKB 022, sometimes called the TKB 022 PM. A Bakelite enjoyer's dream, this bizarre bullpup rifle looks like a mangled AK. The original designs fired 7.62 by 39mm, same as the AK, but the final version fired 5.6 by 39mm, also called .220 Russian. These designs underwent testing and were found to be significantly more accurate than the AKM, in addition to being more maneuverable, being 525mm long, 20.7 inches, against the AKM's 880mm, 34.6 inches, and weighed only 2.8 kilograms loaded, 6 pounds, against the AKM's 3.3 kilograms, 7.3 pounds. Despite these significant advantages, the weapon was rejected for being too radical a change. Korobov's final gun is this strange creature, the TKB 579. Designed in the late 1950s, the Soviet military was looking to replace the Mosin Nagant, originally designed way back in 1891, and get a modern sniper rifle. Korobov put forward his 579, chambered for the same 7.62 by 54mm rimmed round as the Mosin Nagant. This gun was so poorly received, it's believed it wasn't even tested before being rejected, and ultimately the SVD, also known as the Dragunov, was adopted. Next is the Dardic Pistols. These bizarre revolvers use a tround, a triangular round which allows you to compact more rounds in the same space, in theory. Dardic started work on this round in the 1940s, and the guns came out in the 1950s. They came with swappable barrels, originally meant to fire a .38 Dardic tround with a 22 and 30 caliber option. There were two models sold, the 1100 and the 1500, holding 11 and 15 trounds respectively, with a 2000 designed to hold, big surprise, 20 trounds. The trounds would be loaded into the internal magazine, and then the revolving chambers would pick up a round, fire, rotate, and drop the spent casing out. So somewhat like a revolver, somewhat like a semi-auto pistol, very strange altogether. Calico Light Weapons System is an American gun manufacturer. Founded in 1982, their guns all have one consistent quirk, a helical magazine attached on top of the gun. Specifically, I want to point out the Calico M100, a semi-automatic rifle that fires 22 LR and holds 100 rounds in its magazine. This beast was intended for police use, but is legal to buy for citizens, and can be yours for just $600. While they look very bizarre, the high capacity and low cost of ammunition can make for a lot of fun. And for the final gun, we have the Kbri. This gun was made famous by its inclusion in Battlefield 1. This gun fires a 2mm round, also appropriately named Kolibri, which means hummingbird in German. Only about 1,000 were produced, all in 1914, and then were discontinued with the start of World War I. They were marketed as a lady's best option for self-defense, being able to easily fit in a purse. The gun came in at only 6.8 centimeters, or 2.7 inches long. Franz Fahnel used the years of World War I to design improved versions, releasing a 3mm and 4mm round and matching guns after the end of World War I, which were then manufactured until 1938. Thus we come to the end of our journey. I hope you enjoyed this look at some of my favorite weird guns.